Hey guys, and welcome to another command block tutorial. Today's video, we're going to be becoming the masters of Spinjitzu. As you guys already saw in the introduction, we actually have 4 different elements that you can spin with the primary 4 elements from the show, Lego Ninjago Masters of Spinjitzu, which, by the way, was a great show that I grew up on, at least the first few seasons of it. I didn't watch the later ones, but yeah, that's what we're basing it on today. So I'm going to show you guys kind of what's going on. First things first is if you want to actually use it, you have to give yourself the tag Ninjago. So see right here, type this in chat or something like that. In order to activate it, to make it so you are a ninja, you have to give yourself the tag Ninjago. And then you just hold one of these 4 elements to basically spin around as that element. Now, each element, on top of having different visuals, also does have a slightly different ability, as well as slightly different range and damage values as they're going around and attacking enemies. So I'm going to show you what those are, how you can adjust them on your own. Each one of them, like I said, has a slightly different ability. However, not super different right now because I do kind of want to make a part 2 to this video, perhaps some golden weapons as something that we add in the future. But yeah, so they're going to be pretty similar with a bunch of different visuals. I will also mention that you actually are able to PvP with these abilities. Now, you can't have fire PvPing against fire, but you can have fire versus ice or versus lightning. Like, you'll be able to PvP as long as it's different elements. But all that aside, let's get right into the commands. So first off, what we're doing is we're checking at somebody if they have the tag Ninjago and there is not already an armor stand, we're going to summon an armor stand named Spin above them. So I'm actually going to remove this invisibility just to show you guys what's happening. Essentially, to track the particles, any person that is a ninja has an invisible armor stand above them that is spinning, which essentially is how we are checking the rotation of the particles as we're actually doing this stuff. Because the rotation is independent from my camera because it's based on that armor stand, as you guys can kind of see with these particles here. So essentially, if the player doesn't already have an armor stand, we're going to summon an armor stand. Additionally, if the player does have an armor stand, we're just going to be teleporting the nearest one, basically 10 blocks above the player. This is just going to make sure it's following me around, so that way the particles are where I am. Next up, we're going to have it be teleporting in place, so it's not moving with this command, but it is spinning around. That's what this little bit at the end here does. It's just changing the direction that it's facing. Boom, as you can clearly see here. And lastly, the one I just disabled, which is to turn it invisible. Pretty simple, now it's gone. So that's going to be kind of the universal command. These are going to be for all 4 elements. And now a lot of these, you guys can see we have 2 chains here. These are the particle commands. So we have 2 chains of repeating particle commands followed by a couple of effects. As you can see, it's a lot more particles than anything else, so just keep that in mind. But we're going to go in order of fire, ice, lightning, and earth. And I will have timestamps if you guys want to skip to a specific element. So essentially what we're doing is we're going to be checking at the player. I'm only going to explain these once per set, and then I'm just going to let you see, because they repeat basically a lot. We're checking at the player who has the tag Ninjago, who's holding in their main hands a blaze powder, so that's the item for fire. And then we're going to go, basically, we're going to copy the rotation of the armor stand. That's what the rotated as right here means. We're copying the rotation of the armor stands. Then we're going to have the particle display slightly in front of where the armor stand is looking. That's what this is. The 0.3 is 0.3 blocks in front of the armor stand's looking direction, and then 0.1 above where the armor stand is looking. I should also mention this is on a 0 tick delay. Next up, we're going to do the exact same commands. Literally, the only thing we're going to be changing is these coordinates right here and right here. So in the last one, it was 0.1 and 0.3. And this one is going to be 0.3 and 0.4. And then for the rest of these, we're going to be adding by 0.3 on the first number and 0.1 on the second number. So it gets higher and slightly wider as it goes up. So the next one is 0.6 and 0.5, 0.9 and 0.6, 1.2 and 0.7, 1.5 and 0.8, finally 1.8 and 0.9. Once again, those are the exact same commands. The only difference is the actual direction, and that's kind of how we have this kind of cone that you see here. So The second chain of particles is literally exactly the same, except we have a negative sign here. So exactly the same commands, literally the only difference is going to be a negative sign, and it's going to be the same way up the whole chain. I'm not going to go through and explain these. I'm just going to show you each command so you guys can copy it, but it's exactly the same as what you have here, but with a negative. So the next one, 0.3, negative 0.4, 0.6, negative 0.5, 0.9, negative 0.6, 1.2, negative 0.7, 1.5, 0.8, negative 0.8, and then 1.8, negative 0.9. Now, just to kind of show you guys what's going on, I'm actually going to turn off the spinning command real quick. And essentially, you guys are going to see, this is what we have right here. We have essentially two lines that are kind of like a funnel, and they go up on either side of us. So this is, as soon as we give it rotation, it's going to look a lot like a little tornado. But this is essentially what we have at the base with our particles. This is what it looks like without spinning. So yeah, that's about it. Turn the spin back on. So that's all you need for the particles for the fire element. Now let's talk about the special commands. So the first one is going to be executing at the player with the tagged Ninjago that's holding the blaze powder. Pretty similar start to the particle commands. Then we're going to be running a damage command for anything that is not holding a blaze powder. You guys can see that blaze powder with a quantity of 0, that means the player is, or whatever it is not holding blaze powder in their hands, and they're within a 2-block radius, they're going to take 10 entity attack damage. Now, I should mention that this command is slightly different for each of these. I kind of have them slightly differently balanced. So the fire has like the most damage with the lowest range. You guys will see that as we go on. Next up, we have pretty much exactly the same command, except we have effect instead of damage. This is going to give any target a couple seconds of wither, meaning that as the fire player moves away, they're going to keep taking damage. Of course, we're also going to be giving the players invisibility, so all we're doing here is just giving the player invisibility. On top of that, we're going to give the player the animation creeper swelling, because this makes it so you can't see the item that they're holding. If I briefly disable this, you guys see in third person, you guys see I'm just holding the item there. It really doesn't look as good, so we're using this play animation to essentially make my arms so tiny that you can't even see what I'm holding. And yeah, that's exactly how all of these are going to work. So I'm not going to go in as much depth. That was creepy. Okay. Thanks, Minecraft. Probably going to have to raise the audio of that in editing to make sure you guys can hear that. I'm not going to go as in-depth with the rest of these commands because they're all exactly the same pretty much, but I will show every single one on screen to make sure you guys can handle it. So next up, we're going to be using ice right here. Exactly the same command. The coordinates are going to be exactly the same. Literally the only difference is that we're using the item ice and we're using the balloon gas particle. Everything else can be the exact same. Coordinates even the same. 0.1, 0.3, 0.3, 0.4, 0.6, 0.5, 0.9, 0.6, 1.2, 0.7, 1.5, 0.8, 1.8, 0.9. On the flip side, exactly the same. 0.1, negative 0.3, 0.3, negative 0.4, 0.6, negative 0.5, 0.9, negative 0.6, 1.2, negative 0.7, 1.5, negative 0.8, and 1.8, negative 0.9. Once again, exactly the same as what we saw for the fire, just different particle, different item. Now, we did have a little bit difference. So in this one, in the damage command, it is exactly the same. The only difference is that, number one, it's a player holding ice in their hands. Number two, it's going to have a slightly longer range or bigger radius of damage, but it's going to do less damage. So that way you kind of have some incentives to maybe choose one element over the other. It's just for balancing. Of course, you guys can adjust this as much as you want. Additionally, we are going to give the player the target slowness. So instead of wither, we're going to give them slowness. So they're kind of getting like frozen in place. And we're also going to give them weakness. That way, if you're dealing with melee troops, they're not going to be able to do nearly as much damage to you after you freeze them. So better survivability than the fire, but you're going to kill things slower. Additionally, it's going to be the exact same for the invisibility, and for the invisibility animation, exactly the same. All right, moving on. We have next up is the lightning, which of course in the show is blue, so we're using colored fire for that. Not sure that lightning's really blue, but you know, Jay was pretty cool and all that. Although I won't lie, Zane's the best. Also, yeah, gonna be doing the thing to check if you guys are actually watching for the full tutorial. Make sure you include in the comments who your favorite ninja was from the show. Even if you don't have one, just say Zane, because Zane was the coolest. But yeah, put that in the comments to show me, hey, you actually made it to this part of the tutorial. Anyways, let's keep going. So, exactly the same thing. The only thing is the player is holding a lightning rod and blue flame particle. And then, obviously, the coordinates, I'll read them off. 0.1.3, 0.3.4, 0.6.5, 0.9.6, 1.2.7, 1.5.8, 1.8.9. And then 0.1, negative 0.3, 0.3, negative 0.4, 0.6, negative 0.5, 0.9, negative 0.6, 1.2, negative 0.7, 1.5, negative 0.8, and 1.8, negative 0.9. Additionally, for the lightning, you guys probably already saw in the intro kind of what its passive was. First of all, we have slightly shorter range with 8 attack damage. Once again, adjust that as you guys see fit. So this has lower range and lower damage. But kind of makes up for it because on a 40 tick delay, which is every 2 seconds, keep in mind you can make this happen more often by giving this number right here smaller amounts, or you can make it happen less often by giving it higher. This is the time in between. Looks like a big command. It's not that bad. We're executing at the ninja who has the lightning rod in their main hands at a random target that does not have lightning in their main hands, that is outside of 5 blocks of the player but within 15 blocks of the player, is not an armor sand, it's not an item or an XP orb. We're going to summon a lightning bolt. This just means as you're spinning around, you're going to be randomly summoning lightning on enemies. Pretty fun, pretty powerful. Keep it if you like. Additionally, we're of course going to be doing the same invisibility stuff that we did for the other 2 ninjas. Exactly the same, the only difference is the item that's being held. And finally, we have the earth elements. So the earth elements, obviously the particles are a little bit different just because there isn't... See, these 3 are all kind of pretty similar particles just because they have one in each of those colors that worked out well. Fortunately, the earth, like black particles, didn't really have super great particles that were kind of matching sets, so this is what we have. But yeah, the special ability for the earth is essentially that you can actually... Number 1, you get resistance. Number 2, you actually drag enemies towards you as you're spinning around. So, let's get into it. Look at the particles. Exactly the same. The only thing is doing the infested emitter particle and checking for cobblestone. Other than that, 0.3.4, 0.6.5, 0.9.6, 1.2.7, oops, 1.5.8, 1.8.9, backside here, 0.1, negative 0.3, 0.3, negative 0.4, 0.6, negative 0.5, 0.9, negative 0.6, 1.2, negative 0.7, 1.5, negative 0.8, and 1.8, negative 0.9. Once again, if you guys do need to copy that word for word, just pause the video. But going on, let's just get into the specifics for the earth element. First up, it's going to be the attack range and the attack damage. Has a little bit more range than the fire, but has a little bit less damage than the fire. Once again, feel free to adjust this as you see fit. Top of that, we have this fancy pool command. Essentially, we're executing at the player that has a cobblestone in their main hands. Then we're going to go to anything that does not have cobblestone in their main hands, that is outside of 3 blocks, within 15 blocks, is not an armor sand, is not an item or an XP orb. It's going to teleport itself 0.4 blocks facing the spinning ninja. True, meaning it won't go through blocks. It's a big command, but that's essentially what's happening. Next up, invisibility. And guess what? Invisibility. And finally, we're giving the Earth Ninja a little bit of resistance just to kind of help it, since you are kind of pulling on the enemies near yourself, and also, I mean, I think it makes sense for the Earth to be a little bit more resilient than the other elements. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. Now, keep in mind, this might be something I do a part 2 for, so yeah, I think the little passes for each element are a bit not the most unique because I want to do kind of future updates for this. But if you guys have any ideas that you want to add, leave them in the comments, or even better, just add them in your own worlds. Of course, if you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to leave them in the comments. However, I do also recommend joining the Discord, the link for which will be in the description. Lots of people that can help you with your commands a lot faster than maybe just me responding to YouTube comments. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and bye!